Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee. My apologies to those of you in the room and elsewhere at home for the delay, but that's due to some technical issues. For those of you at home, the members of the public, you should be able to see the video and hear and see the presentations and see who's actually speaking, but not necessarily actually view the person speaking on their own. So my apologies for that, but these things do happen from time to time. However, I'm Councillor Roger Upton, the chairman of this committee, and with me this afternoon on my left is Councillor Maureen Stockwood, my vice chairman. There's been quite a few changes today with people sending apologies and substitutions and the like, so I'm going to ask Laura Webb, if I may, of the Democratic Services to give a resume of who's here and who's subbing for who. Thank you, Laura.
We've got apologies from Councillor Purdy Horan and the substitute is Councillor Phillips. We've also got apologies from Councillor Clark and the substitute is Councillor Adair. We've also got apologies from Councillor Gowland and Councillor Jones. We've got apologies from Councillor Gray and the substitute is Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Quite a complicated list of changes there today, but there we are. Also present from the officers' side are Leanne Ashmore, the Director of Development and Economic Development, Andrew Pegram, the Service Manager for Planning, Rebecca Sells, Principal Solicitor, Helen Tambini, the Democratic Services Manager, and Laura Webb, who you've just heard from, and Planning Officers, I believe, Phil Cook on my right, Andrea Baxter, Emily Dodd, who will give various presentations throughout the meeting. Briefly, some housekeeping issues, if I may. No fire alarm expected this afternoon, but if it does go off, then we should muster in the far corner of the car park. For those of you not familiar with the layout of the property, probably best thing is to follow one of us, and hopefully that will keep you safe. Mobile phones, if you could turn them to silent or mute, that would be appreciated. They can be a bit of a distraction. And then I'll go straight to item 1 on the agenda, which we've covered in terms of apologies and absence of substitute members. But I'd like to say where the Borough Council is a consultee for a County Council application, which is true of agenda item 4, the Barton and Favis item, then those county councillors should declare an interest as a county council or a ward councillor. And I'll start there by saying I'd like to declare my own interest in that item 4, land south of Burrows Farm, Barton and Favis. And I will leave the meeting for this item because my interest is that I'm a member of the County Council's Planning Committee, and that will be the determining authority for this application. So for that last item on the agenda, Barton and Favis, I will hand over the chairmanship to my Vice Chairman, Councillor Maureen Stockwood, and I will leave the room. Are there any other county councillors? Councillor Adair.
Yeah, also on agenda item 4, I also, as a county councillor, and I was part of the policy committee that brought this recommendation forward. So therefore, I think I'll leave the room also in case there's a conflict of interest.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations under the Code of Conduct or the Planning Code from any other members? I don't see any. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is, as usual, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of September 2021. Are members of the committee, those of you that were here, agree that these minutes are correct? And if so, could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Proposed by Maureen, seconded. Councillor Mason. Thank you. So we can now move on to the main agenda, item 4, which is to discuss this afternoon's planning applications. I'm still in evening mode, actually. I can't get used to these afternoon meetings. But first, just a quick reminder, as usual, that hopefully all members have read the papers in detail and try not to repeat the same points over again, that we keep them concise and relevant and get through the business in a timely manner. It is a quasi-judicial meeting that should be conducted with the appropriate professionalism and behaviour, and only material planning issues should really be debated at this meeting. I'd like to note the report of the Director of Growth and Economic Development, which gives us all an overview of the planning process and the 4 applications that we are considering this afternoon. Takes me to the first application, which is reference 21/01464/REM, the Central Works Depot, Abbey Road, West Bridgford. Reserve matters application pursuant to outline permission 19/00678/out to seek approval of the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale for residential development comprising 71 new homes. So if I could ask the planning officer to mention any late representations and then take us through the presentation, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no late representations on this application. Before I start, can I please advise members that the recommendation at the end of the report should actually read that we're granting planning approvals for this because it is an outline application. Sorry, it is a reserved matters application, and it should not be grant planning permission, but as I say, grant planning approval. This is a reserved matters application dealing with the details of outline planning permission reference 19/00678/out for the site at the former Abbey Road Council Depot, West Bridgford, which was used for the storage and maintenance of refuse vehicles. The site is flat and approximately 1.9 hectares in area. Rectangular in shape, it has been cleared and is located within a predominantly residential area in West Bridgford. The site is located within flood zone 2 and 3. Sorry. Apologies, Chairman, we've lost sharing.
Another technical glitch.
Sorry, which one? I'm just going to have to do it.
Apologies for that, Chairman. As I say, the site is flat and 1.9 hectares in area and rectangular in shape. It has already been cleared and the site is located predominantly within the residential area and lies within flood zone 2 and 3. There are local shops within the locality and also close to the school. Sorry, the site is a primary school. There are currently 2 access to the site, one from the junction of Abbey Road and Eltham Road, and the second from Buckfast Way. The outline application proposed a development of up to 76 dwellings on an approximate density of approximately 40 dwellings per hectare, comprising of a mixture of apartments and linked properties of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedrooms. with private amenity space in the form of ground and upper floor terraced areas. The Reserve Matters application now seeks approval for the layout, scale and appearance of the buildings, landscaping of the site details, both hard and soft, also details of the internal highway arrangements. The number of dwellings now proposed is 71, which includes 30% of affordable housing, and that equates to a density of 37 dwellings per hectare, with vehicular access off Abbey Road and Bucksfast Way as approved by the outline consent. The supporting statement accompanying the submission advises that the design and layout is sympathetic to the existing locality, yet creates a contemporary and high-quality new urban environment which encourages walking and cycling to local facilities. The proposal meets the established design code for the site and all technical requirements. During the processing of the application, a number of amendments were made to address consultees' responses. Consultees' comments are set out in your reports, but in summary, the following amendments and request conditions, there are no further objections to the proposal from any statutory consultees. Councillor Gowland maintains her objection to the proposal and their comments are summarised in your reports. There have been 87 representations made from local residents, 80 objecting, 3 which are neutral and 4 in support. There are many comments, all of which are summarised again within your reports under the key headings of principle of development, highway safety, footpaths including the right-of-way, public right-of-way, landscaping, loss of trees and wildlife, design, materials and density, affordable housing, amenity, loss of privacy, infrastructure, flooding, sustainability, energy efficiency and disturbance during the construction period. Many of the original comments were repeated on the revised submissions, plus some from the Central West Bridgeford Community Association who object to the scheme. Again, their comments are set out in your reports. The key policy considerations are set out in your reports also, and they include local and national policies from the Local Plan and National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, which collectively consider sustainability, design, highways, density and the environment. Looking at the key issues, principle of development has been established through the approval of an outline planning permission for residential development following the demolition and clearance of all buildings and structures on the site. The site is within a sustainable location with access to local facilities, including schools, public transport and recreational facilities. Turning to the impact on the character of the area, the NPPF is clear in paragraph 124, the efficient use of land should be made and this includes the use of different types of houses, land suitable to provide it, local market conditions, available infrastructure promotion of sustainable travel, the desirability of maintaining an area's prevailing character and setting, including residential gardens, or of promoting regeneration and change, and the importance of securing well-designed, attractive and healthy places. Paragraph 125 goes on to say local planning authorities should refuse applications which do not make efficient use of land and should be flexible in applying policies subject to an acceptable living standard being provided. The proposal offers a variety of property types and tenure, and at 71 dwellings with on-plot parking and amenity space provides in the form of gardens and terraces together with a large central green. Overall, it is considered to be an appropriate mix and density of development on the brownfield site, and that whilst the development may have an alternative type of private amenity space to that we would traditionally seek, it is considered that this is acceptable in this unique location and its contemporary style. It would be inappropriate and would fail to make the most efficient use of land to reflect the character and density of the surrounding area. In respect of the area's character, there are a mixture of flats, single-storey and two-storey dwellings, some with accommodation in the roof, where lofts have been converted surrounding the site, and as a result, it is considered that the range of accommodation suggested in 2- and 3-storey form is appropriate on this site. Although flat roofs are being introduced, it is considered that this will create a contemporary development with a specific character of its own and that will not look at odds with its surroundings. In terms of the materials put forward, it is proposed to introduce an element of new materials together with traditional, and the site is considered to give an opportunity to create a well-designed and attractive place with its own strong sense of place. In accordance with the NPPF, significant weight should be given to the outstanding or innovative designs which promote high levels of sustainability, and in this regard, it is considered that the proposal complies. In terms of design, scale, materials and layout, the density of the development is set by the Outline Planning Commission, which was approved at 76 dwellings. However, the number sought now is for 71, so less than that already approved. There should be a mixture of 2- and 3-storey properties, including the flats, which are located either side of the entrance to the site of Buckfast Way, which back onto the allotments and the larger rear gardens of properties on Abbey Road, with the 3-storey dwellings also backing onto those existing properties on Abbey Road, where the distance between the facing windows is greater than what we would normally require in the council's residential design guide. Although the gardens to the 2, 3 and 4 bedroom houses are small, they are considered to be acceptable as there are other areas available for recreation close by. All the properties are served well, with on-site parking provision and visitor spaces, which would reduce pressure for on-street parking. House types and other minor amendments have been made to better suit the site and street scenes. It is considered that a suitable design and layout for the proposed 71 dwellings has now been achieved to meet the requirements of Policy 10 of the Core Strategy and Section 12 of the NPPF, which seeks to secure well-designed and sustainable developments and also make the most efficient use of land. With regard to affordable housing, 30% as required by local plan policy is provided on site in the form of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments and 5 2-bed shared ownership homes. All ground floor apartments of the affordable housing element will be fully accessible for disabled occupiers. In terms of energy efficiency, the applicants have submitted a report to demonstrate that there will be a reduction of 50% CO2 emissions from the development compared to the requirements of 19% of the building regulations, and this will be achieved through the using of various initiatives. Although outside the planning regime, supplementary initiatives will also be offered, which would further improve energy efficiency of the site. Highways, as previously mentioned, the site access point, including the removal of 3 trees, have been approved under the Outline Planning Commission and is not for consideration with this application. The Highway Authority have been consulted on the internal layout and proposed parking facilities and have raised no objection. The existing access will need to be stopped up, but this again is outside of the planning regime and process. There is a single track vehicular access to the rear of properties on Abbott Road, but this is not impacted on by the proposal. The footpath located to the east side of the site and rear of Abbey Road has now gone through a diversion process and has been considered as being acceptable and is awaiting confirmation. Turning to landscape and ecology, the loss of trees is regrettable, but a comprehensive landscaping scheme is proposed which would more than compensate for the loss of those trees, focusing on native trees and hedge species and the addition of street trees outside of the site. And these are the details of these are currently being negotiated. A total of 43 trees more suited to residential developments would be planted with greater ecological value. The proposal also includes hedgehog gates, and these are proposed to enable hedgehogs to move between gardens, and it will be facilitated by gaps in fences and walls. An area of open space is also proposed in the centre of the site, which will be managed by a management company. This and other local areas of public open space would help promote a healthy lifestyle for the occupants of the site. All the properties will be provided with broadband. There still remains a requirement for the applicants to enter into a Section 186 agreement, which was negotiated at the outline stage. and will only be entered into once planning permission has been granted. The proposal would be visually acceptable, but would not have an unacceptable impact on the residential amenity and would not be harmful to highway safety. There would also be no adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area. Accordingly, proposed development is considered to confirm with the objectives of the local policy, national guidance and the design guides. The Reserved Matters application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. I have got two amendments to conditions. Condition 1 is removed as the time period for compliance is set out in the outline planning permission. I would also request a further condition to ensure that the design and materials of any new fences or means of enclosure are submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and the approved details being implemented thereafter and maintained in place for the life of the development. The additional condition is required as those details were not provided with the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cook, for a very comprehensive presentation. We now move to our speakers, and I believe we have two speakers for this application, Mr. Toby Everson, architect, and Councillor Gowland, the ward councillor. So if speaker 1, Mr. Toby Everson, would like to come to the table in front of me. It's a little bit like Mastermind, but when you're comfortable, there is a button on the microphone, and when the red light comes on when you pressed it, then you have 5 minutes to speak, and we will give you an indication when you've got 30 seconds left as you come towards the end of your 5 minutes. So when you feel comfortable, press the button, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to say a few words in support of the application for Reserved Matters on the Abbey Road housing project. The applicant is aware of local concerns about the proposals, but the application for Reserved Matters is to present the details of the proposals, which the case officer has looked at carefully. All matters of principle were dealt with when the application was granted outline consent. Rushcliffe Borough Council reached the decision to bring the depot, a brownfield site near to the centre of West Richford, forward for development at Cabinet meeting in February 2018. Following an invitation to tender process in October 2018, Alan Joyce Architects were appointed directly by Rushcliffe Borough Council to provide architectural services to support the vision for new housing on the brownfield depot site. We were asked to prepare a design code, an illustrative scheme to demonstrate compliance with the design code, and to submit an outline planning application to agree the principle of housing and new points of access on the depot site. The above outline planning application was approved in June 2019, and a general project update was taken to growth and development scrutiny meeting in October 2019. For continuity, Alan Joyce Architects have since been employed by the incoming developers, Peveril Homes and Stagfield, to continue design development of the Rushcliffe Borough Council scheme. This developed scheme has evolved following feedback from the growth and scrutiny meeting in January 2021 and from consultations received during this Reserved Matters application. The final proposals that have been presented to the committee today are a result of this process. The proposals themselves are for 71 new sustainable homes set across a wide variety of types and tenures. 30% of the total are comprised of affordable housing, and all of the homes benefit from a raft of high quality, modern design and sustainability features. The team work closely with the developer and the council to deliver the council's vision in what we hope will be an exemplar scheme. Apart from the design, what's very special about the scheme is that it's completely gas-free. It will be one of the largest no-gas developments with air source heat pumps and efficient heating throughout. Across the site, over 40 new trees are to be planted, incorporating native species as well as specimen shrubs, wildflowers, bird and bat boxes. The result of this will be an enormous increase in biodiversity across the site in relation to the previous commercial use, as well as the creation of an attractive landscape-focused environment. The central green space provides an area for informal play and also creates an area for underground attenuation of stormwater, ensuring that the proposals do not increase the risk of flooding in the area. The new vehicular access points at Abbey Road and Buckfast Way have already been approved under the outline application. The new new junctions are therefore outside the scope of this reserved matters application. However, they are considered a significant improvement to highway safety over the current arrangement, which exits directly onto the junction of Eltham Road and Abbey Road. The number of parking spaces allocated to each home accords with the NCC Highways Design Guide, a higher standard than the previous 6Cs guidance, and which ensures that all houses have a minimum of 2 and up to 3 dedicated spaces, the majority of which are on plot. The homes themselves will be heavily insulated within a thermally massive construction, ensuring internal temperature fluctuations and heat loss are kept to a minimum. This fabric-first approach to energy efficiency is supplemented by air source heat pumps, underfloor heating and photovoltaic panels, and efficient infrared heating systems within the apartments. The net result of all of this is that the project as a whole will significantly improve upon the requirement of a 19% improvement of the building regulations requirements that were set out in the design code. The whole development will be gas-free, with all heating and hot water supplied through energy-efficient electric systems. The new homes, whilst contemporary in style and with many modern internal features, will be built using traditional construction methods, including brickwork and blockwork external walls. Windows and doors will be powder-coated aluminium rather than standard UPVC, and roofs will be slate or standing seam metal. This combination of materials will ensure that the build quality is of a very high standard and built to last. In conclusion, the need for new homes in West Bridgford has been has been evidenced by the lack of supply and extraordinary demand that has been the case for many years. The redevelopment of a brownfield site in an area of such high demand is exactly what is asked for by sustainable development as defined by the NPPF. Rushcliffe Borough Council had a clear vision of how they wanted this sustainable development to be realised, and the incoming developers have taken this vision and developed the detail but kept to the fundamental principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Everson, within the time, so congratulations on that. Our next speaker is Councillor Gowland, one of the ward councillors. So same procedure. I think you know it fairly well, don't you? So when you're ready.
Thanks very much. So first of all, I'm really happy to see a brownfield site being developed. I'm really happy to see it being developed quite intensively so that we make the best use of that land. But I'm here in part to represent, well, wholly to represent my residents, and in particular residents who live on the estate that's at the very south of this site, which is a metropolitan housing estate, the residents who are less able to contact the council via the website. So one of the major problems in this area is parking for the schools. And so one of the issues that people have is blockage of the Abbey Road and Buckfast Way. I think one of the major concerns along the way with this estate has been the flats on the very south end of the estate. And I would request that they are moved back into the estate so that the height is reduced for the people in the bungalows on the Abbey Road, on the metropolitan estate. And also, importantly, so that that communal parking that's on that corner is moved back into the estate. Because I foresee that that communal parking will become a source of conflict where parents from the school come and park there because it looks like a communal parking area, whereas actually it houses the flats, parking for the flats. That wouldn't happen on somebody's front drive. Related to that, the footpath through the site, which as we've heard has been relocated to now go down this road, whereas before it was a fully fenced off pedestrian only path, now goes down this road. And as I've said before, and I can't quite find it on the current version of the plans, I would like to see the frontages of these houses be designed with only one thing in mind, which is openness and absolute view of the pavements, so that the children can be allowed to run through this estate in exactly the way that they've been allowed to run down that path. They're not having to have their hands held as they walk to school, because at the moment, I think we're going to be losing some level of independence for those children, because we're going to walk them through a road where people are going to be pulling out to get to work. And finally, I think finally, bicycle provision, my favourite topic. As far as I'm concerned, a bicycle locked up on the street is very likely to be safe. In my case, a bicycle locked up in a shed in the back garden is very unlikely to be used, at least by me. So I'd like to see bicycle provision in the front of the houses, and I can't see how that's any different to a car being parked at the front. The CO2 plans are absolutely laudable, and I can't criticise them, but it would be really good to move the three-storey buildings away from the frontage, away from the road, Metropolitan Estate, away from Abbey Road. There's all that area of allotment where nobody's going to mind, and that would make residents much happier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Mr. Cook, are there any items we've picked up there that you want to respond to?
I think we've addressed most of the items. Obviously, the parking on the flats, I mean, that should be marked up as being private parking, so that shouldn't really be an issue. Footpath, as I mentioned, that has now been diverted. It currently is a little bit, it's not a straight footpath, there's no lighting along there. It's got high fences either side, so it doesn't make it very secure. But as I say, the footpath diversion has now gone through and it's just waiting for confirmation. So there were objections from the school and various other people to the diversion, but following negotiation and discussion, they have now been withdrawn. Bicycle storage, there is a condition requiring details of bicycle storage, so those details will need to be submitted and approved. Where they will be located in the site, we anticipate that they will be at the rear of properties, but that's something that we can negotiate. In terms of the three-storey apartments, they've been located at that at the Buckfast Way end and examined, and we don't believe that they would have an impact on any of the residents in that locality. So we have accepted that they be located in that position. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds to me as if there's been a fairly robust debate on those three key items. And as you say, the footpath is resolved after significant consultation and the like. Right, members of the committee, we're ready to discuss this application and hopefully make a decision. Who wants to start the debate? Go on, somebody might want to. Councillor Thomas, yes, on the back there.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 4 areas of questions and comments. The first is about the affordable element. Is there any social rent accommodation there, or is it all affordable rent? And if so, what's the reasoning for that? The second item is there were some comments about lifts in the flats, and the response was that all the ground floor flats are accessible for wheelchairs. So the question is, are they also adapted for wheelchairs, or are any of the ground floor flats adapted for wheelchairs? The third question is about the green credentials of the site, which the speaker went into some detail. Can you just confirm that there are solar panels on all the roofs, and what items of kind of green infrastructure are optional that the people buying the houses have to opt into? And then the final comment is about the Section 1 and 6 agreement, which I can't find on the portal. And the reason I was looking was that I was wondering about the management charges for this estate. There's a very small amount of green space in it. I assume that in line with all the other estates, it'll be set up for management charges for the residents. And I'm quite concerned about that, with there being such a small amount of green space. A visitor car park that the residents would have to pay for, and it being such a thoroughfare with the footpath having been removed, there's going to be a lot of footfall through this estate. And if it comes up with the same issues about management charges and public and private space that some of the other sites have come up with, I think it's going to be particularly bad in this site. So those are the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. While Mr. Cook considers those, I could probably pitch in on the third one. If you mentioned about the wheelchair access, unless I'm mistaken with my technical knowledge, I would have thought Part M of the building regulations would require suitable wheelchair access to housing. But that's my personal view, and it will probably be clarified or not. But no, good questions there. Do you want to respond to those, Mr. Cook, or and Mr. Pegram? I'm waving a hand over there.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll make my presence worthwhile.
Thank you.
Just to pick up on some of those issues. In terms of the affordable housing, no, there is no social rent, but the mix has been discussed with our strategic housing manager, and she has agreed the mix to be provided. So it would be intermediate and affordable rent. The issue about lifts in the flats, Part M of the building regulation simply says that reasonable access shall be provided. In the case of 2- and 3-storey blocks of flats, there wouldn't be a obligatory requirement under the building regs to provide lifts, but the ground floor ones, as I understand it, have been designed to be wheelchair accessible, so they would be acceptable for people with disabilities. In terms of the green credentials, you raised the issue about solar panels. Firstly, the report I've set out at paragraph 154, that the proposal will deliver 80% CO2 saving in energy savings compared to the current building regulations. So that's well above the current building regulations, and also well above the design code that was put forward. In terms of solar panels, my understanding in that respect is that the houses would be effectively designed to take those, and there could be an upgrade if the people moving into those houses wanted solar panels. They could ask for an upgrade, and they could be fitted to the buildings. And in terms of the management charges, this would be typically done as we do currently, looked after by a management company, and there would be a service charge payable by the residents on the estate. In this instance, there's a relatively small area of open space, which in my view doesn't present such a problem. Where we do have problems is where, for instance, developments are proposing country parks, which are available for the wider community to occupy and use. And those certainly do raise some concerns. But in this instance, the principal area of open space, as you can see on the screen at the moment, is that area in the middle of the site, which is designed principally for use and benefit of the residents on this development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. May I ask a clarification? Am I right in thinking that the roads would be adopted by the Highway Authority?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So as you say, Mr. Pegram, the central green space with I think we heard that the attenuation tank underneath it is really the main item for a management company to look after, because the roads, all of the roads and the hard standings there are taken care of. Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a couple of questions about the parking. I'm less concerned with the parking from people on the school run. I'm more concerned that there may not be enough parking at the flats, and that they start parking outside other properties. So I just wanted to know how many parking spaces have been allowed for each apartment in those flats, and also if there's how many disabled parking places there are for people in those flats. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just ask members if they could put the microphones a bit nearer to them? It's either my hearing's going bad or something's wrong with the microphones. What about the public? Can you hear us down there? Was it okay? Some of it. Okay. Well, we'll try and put the microphones a bit nearer, and then hopefully it'll be better. Right. The questions from Councillor Phillips. Who wants to take those, Mr. Cook? Or
Yeah, apologies. We're just trying to find out the exact answer to your question. But as I understand it, I mean, these apartments will be mainly one-bedroom apartments, and so they will only be allocated one space, which is in accordance with the County Council's guidance. I'm not sure about the disabled spaces, and we're just trying to find that answer now. We can come back to you later if that's fine.
yes, it's not easy to find this information. I think Councillor Thomas, you indicated you want to come back. Yes.
Yes, it was just on the question of the open space. I think it's the car park as well that's concerning me really, and whether or not there should be any signage or restrictions. The experience that we've had in Eastleigh is that a car park in one of these management schemes is hugely problematic because the residents see that they're paying for it, and they're concerned about all sorts of things like antisocial behaviour and litter and fly tipping and so on, and other people parking there. And I would have thought that some sort of restriction or signage would be needed to ensure that it's only used by residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Mr. Pegram, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. I will pick this one up because it's probably one I'm more familiar with. The site that Councillor Thomas refers to, there has been a recent variation to the Section 106 agreement. In that instance, the car park was provided effectively for use by the adjacent sporting facility. Unfortunately, it was included as part of the open spaces and the management regime for the estate. So people on the estate were paying a contribution towards the maintenance of that car park when it was principally for the use of the sporting facility next door. The 106 has been varied recently, so in that instance, the residents are no longer, as I understand it, responsible for contributing to the, so this is, in this case, slightly different. The car park in question is at the top north of that plan, and is a visitor parking space. So it's a slightly different situation. I wouldn't envisage the same problems arising necessarily that we had with the one at Eastleigh.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Cook, you've got the information that Councillor Phillips asked for, or some further information.
Yeah, just waiting for a little bit more, but there'll be 19 spaces provided for the apartments, but there are no dedicated disabled spaces shown.
Thank you. You respond, Councillor Phillips.
Could we make it a provision that if and when disabled people move into those apartments, that a disabled parking place is made available? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Murray, you've indicated you'd like to speak.
Yes. When will a decision be made about moving the flats so they're backing onto the allotments rather than overlooking the old people's residences off the side?
Pegram.
Chairman, I think on that one, Councillor Gowland suggested that as an alteration to the scheme. However, as we often say in planning committee, you must consider what is before you. So the scheme that is before you this afternoon is with the apartments located at the Buckfast Road frontage. That is what you are considering, and that is what you must make a resolution on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I've got Councillor Mason first, then Councillor Mason.
Thank you. And it's been useful, the answers from Mr. Cook. And has clarified quite a few things for me. I think on the whole, as I look at it, I hear what has been said about the flats at the bottom, but I personally cannot see that they are too much of a problem. I think the site is really excellent, actually. I think that it's been very difficult to get one in a correct manner that is easy access for all 71 houses. It is not a usual either size or shape, really, that we often have to deal with. And so I think it has been a challenge to get those houses in that on at all. As far as the green space goes, I think that it's a reasonable size, maybe could have been a bit bigger, but then you wouldn't have had the number of houses. So all in all, I think it's a very, very successful. And I would like to move the recommendation on page 45. And perhaps I can have a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I've got Councillor Bailey who indicated she would like to speak, so perhaps if she could speak first, and then we'll ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I realise the flats at the bottom, the south part of the development site, will be the one-bedroom flats. But bearing in mind they're so much further away from the open space at the top or towards the top of the site, will their service charges reflect the fact that they won't be getting the same community facilities, bearing in mind they are one-bedroom flats, but they are so very much further away. Will this be reflected in their service charge? Thank you.
I'm not sure of that at all, depending how management company charges are computed. Does anybody? Mr. Cook?
Yeah, that's not material consideration for us today. That is something that will be dealt with by.
Yes, I should have thought of that, shouldn't I? Right. Councillor Thomas.
Sorry, I'd like to suggest an amendment, an additional condition concerning signage about the car park and usage of the car park by non-residents. Thank you.
Have you got a seconder? Oh, you better second, Councillor Murray. Okay, so I suppose really we need to take a vote on the proposed amendment, the proposed condition, before we take the vote on the substantive.
Yeah, because we've got a motion from Councillor Mason, we need to deal with that motion
We do that first.
So
have we got the seconder for Councillor
if
Mason?
we have a councillor for Councillor Mason,
Got a seconder with Councillor Adair. So we've got Councillor Mason proposing and Councillor Adair seconding the substantive.
and then if Councillor Mason's happy to
Yeah.
accept, there were the changes that Mr Cook discussed at the beginning to remove condition 1, add the condition regarding fences and Councillor
Yeah.
Thomas's condition around car park signage, if that's acceptable.
I also mentioned that the recommendation was to approve and not to grant planning permission. So it's to grant planning approval and not to grant planning permission.
So you're content with those changes. Is Councillor Thomas prepared to have your proposal put in with that as a condition?
It was Councillor Dare seconding, so if
Councillor
Councillor
Dare
Dare is
seconded.
happy with those additions of our conditions and Councillor Thomas's condition. Yes, there's planning approval. Yeah.
I think we're there for the vote. Right, we'll take the vote then. All those in favour of the recommendation of this report, please raise your hands.
That's 9, Chair, unanimous.
Thank you, that's unanimous then. That is approved. Which takes us to the second item on this afternoon's agenda. A little bit of movement of officers are presenting it, and it's the item 21//00775/VAR, land north of Asher Lane, Ruddington. Variation of condition 9 of the planning permission, reference 18/00300/out, to allow a change in time frame for off-site highway improvements. Are we ready to roll, as they say? Right. Can I ask for Emily Dodd to give the presentation, or are there any late representations, and then the actual presentation, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. There were 3 late representations which were circulated to members, and they also include a plan and additional photographs submitted by local residents. So, Chairman, members might recall this site previously at Asher Lane. It was granted planning permission on appeal for 175 dwellings, with a new vehicular access located here on Musters Road by demolishing an existing property. So the site has commenced development, and this is that new access on Musters Road, just to give you some context, and you can see the new houses are being built in the background there. The actual current application seeks to vary a highways condition relating to off-site improvements. The original condition from the permission granted by the inspector is on page 57 of the report, paragraph 5. This current application seeks several amendments, It seeks to delay the date when improvements to the junction of the A60 Kirk Lane and Florforth Lane would take place, so that 35 dwellings can be occupied before those improvements take place. I'm just showing you now on the screen that junction for those of you not familiar. So Florforth Lane is over here on the right hand side. You've got the main A60 and then Kirk Lane going into Ruddington here over on the left hand side of your screen. So that's one part of the condition that the developer wishes to alter. In addition, the original condition required signalisation of a junction within the town centre. So this is this junction here along the High Street. The developers wish to offer a commuted sum of money in lieu of signalisation of this junction. As you can see, it's a fairly busy town centre, and the planning application that was originally considered, there were concerns about the additional traffic coming into the village and getting through it without causing undue congestion. The developers, you'll see from the late reps, have now offered a sum of money of £347,439.55. This has been offered and accepted in principle by Nottinghamshire County Council Highways as being the equivalent amount of money that it would have cost to provide signalisation. The developers have also provided some additional reports which demonstrate that actually the benefits of those signals and traffic lights within the village centre, which as you'll see is quite narrow already, would only be a very marginal benefit in terms of things like loss of parking spaces, additional street furniture, and actually how much they would reduce the queues of traffic by at these junctions. So for that reason, the County Council Highways team are satisfied, Chairman, that commuted sum could be accepted instead and would be ring-fenced by way of a Section 106 agreement to be spent within Ruddington. We don't have an exact scheme available of what that money would be spent on because the county obviously will need to go through some design and feasibility work. Some of the measures that have been suggested are additional crossings along the main street and improved cycle connectivity within the village as well. Chairman, whilst we were dealing with the application, officers did query with the County Council whether all the measures within that initial condition were required. One of the measures was to implement some measures to alleviate traffic along the Asher Lane section, which I'm just going to show you now. So this was some yellow lining and realignment works. So the photo I'm showing you now are starting to go down Asher Lane with Distillery Street and the green over here. And further down Asher Lane, you'll see there has been some new surfacing and yellow lining take place already. And this is down to the junction with Musters Road here, so the site's sort of in this area over here. The County Council are satisfied that although not all the works are completed entirely to their satisfaction, the works are guaranteed by a Section 278 agreement for which the County Council have a bond of money already in place. So they are satisfied that they can complete those works to their satisfaction or require the developer to do so. However, local residents are still concerned about these lines not being correct and have sent their late representation through on this regard. Nonetheless, Chairman, we are recommending an approval. It is subject to a Section 106 agreement, so officers would recommend that the Director for Development and Economic Growth is authorised to grant permissions subject to completion of a Section 106 and also the conditions which are outlined on page 67 to 70 of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have a written statement, I believe, from one of the ward councillors, Councillor Gaunt of Ruddington. I think Mrs. Sells will read that out for us.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gaunt writes, we oppose this application because it is totally unacceptable for Avant Homes to try and attempt to delay payment of the Section 106 money. The Asher Lane estate has been plagued with controversy from the start. and the implications on traffic flow through the village from the building of these homes are very real and very severe, and the thought of continued delay to this issue being sorted does not bode well. This should never have even been a problem. The issue should have been resolved before any house development was even begun, and improvements to the infrastructure should have been insisted upon before a single house was built. Unfortunately, the original planning agreement allowed the development to proceed without ensuring that the obvious issue of traffic flow had been met. Now we find ourselves in this ridiculous situation where 2 houses are already occupied in direct breach of the original planning decision, and now Avance want to kick the can down the road even further and plough ahead with the building of dozens more homes without rectifying the problem. Obviously, previous experience of the planning process makes it clear that this application may well be accepted against our views and those of residents. If this is the case, it is essential that the following conditions are met. 1, the payment of an initial pre-occupation payment should be made to fund an assessment of the village village centre and guide how the rest of the money would be spent. 2, immediate improvement work to the A60 Kirk Lane, Flawforth Lane junction must begin without delay. 3, any future money contributed for improvements should be valued at the equivalent value to the cost of having a signalised junction as a minimum. No contribution should be less than this amount and should be more if the final solution is higher. The full cost of improvements must be met by the developer, and any savings should be passed to the parish council for investment into the village. 4, all possible solutions should be available to ensure that the best option for the community is provided. For example, a one-way system through the village centre. This should include consultation with the community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any points that you wish to respond to?
Yes, please. So just in terms of some of the comments made, it is, Mr. Pegram's already said his favourite phrase today, this is the scheme that is before us. The scheme does have permission with the conditions that the inspector granted, so we're not able to go back and resolve that issue of improving traffic flow prior to development commencing at this stage. In terms of staging of payments, that's something we can look at through the Section 106 process. We haven't got to that point yet of determining trigger points. So we can, as officers, I think, note that desire for those to be staged and certainly do our best to negotiate some staging of payments. In terms of the Flawforth Lane junction, we do require a scheme to be submitted before the improvements can take place, and we haven't yet got a scheme that's been sent in. So we would need to still have that part of the condition there, that the scheme has to be submitted before it can then obviously be agreed and implemented. I hope that makes sense, Chairman.
Thank you. I never cease to be amazed how the commuted sum gets down to 55 pence, but there we are. Very, very detailed, isn't it? There we are. It is what it is. So I think we could start the debate. Who wants to pick up on the debate? Councillor Adair, your local area.
I'm very familiar with all of this, having lived through the original planning application and all the rest of it, and very thankful to that chap in Bristol who loaded us with this decision, but never mind, we are where we are with it. I think the key thing here, as far as this is concerned now, I mean, nobody's going to trust in the developers. That's the way that they have been acting locally, so they put the sort of the frighteners on the local community by the way they're acting. Having people living in the houses before they were even ready. I don't know if we're collecting refuse yet or not from those houses, but they've already sold them and got people living in them. So there is a lot of worry about how the developers behave in that area. The yellow lines on Asher Lane, they're still there, they put them in the wrong place, and they've got to recorrect them. So there's lots of issues that are aggravating how people think and behave towards them. But I think the main issue here in front of us is the fact that the parish council have had some conversations with Lowells, and I've had some conversations as the local county councillor with the highways people as well. And I think the sort of the resolution that we got in front of us will work as long as we hold the developer now to account. I think that's the key thing, is holding this developer to account to make it happen what they've actually promised. I think the parish and themselves, I mean, there is an issue about traffic lights at Kirk Lane and the High Street and what that will do to traffic. and I'll leave that to the professionals, but I can understand what they're saying. So I think here, the key thing is as Parish said, is that the S106 collection to solve those problems is collected, ring fenced for Ruddington in their proper manner, and Advent Homes make sure that they pay that proper share of what they negotiated to pay, regardless of whether they carry out the actions or not of the lights in the middle of the high street. That money can be better spent on parking and other issues around the village if that was the conclusion. So the key thing is to get the S106 money.
Thank you. The two tenants I'll take from your comments are it's ring fence and it's for Ruddington. Yeah. Anyone else? Councillor Thomas and then Councillor. Councillor Thomas first.
Yeah, there's several points about the Section 106 agreement, really. One is the amount, and an amount has been proposed that is supposed to be equivalent to the amount of providing the traffic lights. And if, that may or may not be acceptable to everybody, I don't know. But there's also the wording of the Section 106 as to what this money is to be used for. And that hasn't come in front of us in this discussion, as far as I can see. There's a proposal from the highways that it's to reduce single occupancy cars and sustainable transport measures, which encourage non-motorised transport such as cycling and walking. The Parish Council and the Reddington Action Group, however, are talking about an investigation, a report, and measures to improve the flow of traffic within the village. So I think the actual purpose of this money, this pot of money, needs to be ascertained, really, especially as it's a Section 106, and the developer could, unless the actual purpose of it is laid down carefully in the agreement, the developer could come back and say that it hasn't been spent in accordance with what it's being asked for. Just a sum of money to do something to the roads in Ruddington probably isn't specific enough. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not an expert. But the other thing about the Section 106 is they often come with time limits, and I can see this being a very difficult sum of money to spend. And I think when the appropriate, is it the director of whatever she is, agrees to Section 106, it needs to have very careful thought as to the time limit for spending this money. A, because if it's too short, it might not get spent, and B, because if it's too long, nothing may happen for ages, and this does need to be mitigated as soon as possible. As far as the trigger point, they've already missed the trigger point for some of the work, being the first occupation of a house, and then they're proposing the 35th house. And I think they have provided evidence that in the traffic analysis, that the impact of 35 houses isn't that great. So, whether you agree with that or not, I think, you go with that basically. So that's.
Thank you. Quite a few points there, but mainly around the Section 106, and I assume that we will have a comment about when we agree that 106. Well,
Yeah, I can't give you specific details at the moment, Jem, because we haven't drafted that part of the Section 106. You're quite right; it does need to be specific. It needs to specify the amount, the time by which it needs to be paid back. But I'm not able to provide you with those exact details today. I'm afraid they are still to be negotiated. All we have is the sum of money and the general requirements that we will do from there.
If it assists Councillor Thomas, so the Section 106 will be a variation because it's a Section 73. The original Section 106, the clawback term that will apply to this variation is 10 years for the county to spend it. If the county haven't spent it on the highway measures in 10 years, then the developer can claw it back.
Can I just ask, will the Section 106 go back to the ward members and Resident Action Group and the Parish Council and so on for consultation once the wording has been determined?
Mr. Sells advised me we can offer it to comment.
we could offer it to comment, Parish Council. Sorry, councillor Healy first, then councillor Dare.
Thank you, Chair. Points have been made in previous discussions, really. The thing I'm a little confused with is initially at some stage it was felt that some work needed doing to the infrastructure, traffic lights, etc. And knowing Reddington as I do, all of this work seems to be away from the development site itself. And I just wonder how that the developer then decided that that wasn't going to happen or wasn't necessary. But it leads me on to what's going to happen when the 35th dwelling is up, because the points that are being compensated for want of a better word, with this big chunk of cash, will still be there and will probably multiply. And at some stage, these issues are going to have to be addressed. So it's almost like a temporary halt at the moment, which clearly Reddington has accepted in terms of compensation, for want of a better word, for what they can't do. But my point really is the problem isn't going to go away. This is quite a big site. I think in total it's pushing 200 properties, if I remember, having sat on the planning applications when they came in. So, you know, what plans are there to pick up what were problems, but they seem to have just shelved them for the moment. You know, 35 dwellings is fine, but it's obviously has 35 extra cars, if not 70. And how and when and who will address the infrastructure problems that aren't being addressed at the moment.
Thank you. I think some of those points are similar to what Councillor Thomas made. It's all, my opinion, it's all about the Section 106 agreement and when that is put together, as to timeliness and when and what and where. But,
yes, so just to clarify, the highways modelling that was undertaken showed, County Council agree with this, that 30, up to and including 35 dwellings doesn't have a significant impact on traffic flows through the village based on their modelling, which is why 35 is ticked. After that, you're right, there then becomes an impact, and that's what they need to try and mitigate through these measures, through the payment of the monies for improvements in the town centre, and also the changes to the junction at the A60 and Thornforth Lane. So at that point, they then mitigate the impacts, further impacts of the houses over and above the 30th dwelling.
thank you. Councillor Dare.
No, yeah, I think there's 106 money. As long as we collect the right sum of money, and I think that's the key, is we get the right sum of money, and it comes in phases, as we all know, that's 106, as they develop X number, and that Y number, or Z number, the money filters through. And I think it's very clear that the Irish Council is very much in control of what they want in the village, Irish Council, along with the Highways Authority, not going to the Highways Authority, how to deal with the problem. That I know they've got a grip of between them, and it's just a question now if we keep the developer in control to produce the monies as they should through the S106 agreement, and also, I don't know if there's some still money involved as well.
Is there any SIL money involved on this development, do we know? I suspect not. No SIL, just 106. Anybody else wants to contribute to the debate? Councillor Thomas.
Can I propose that we accept the recommendation subject to there being consultation or opportunity to comment on the wording of the section 106 and the timing? Thank you.
The opportunity of the Parish Council.
Parish Council, the Reddington Action Group and ward members to be able to comment on the wording of what this money is to be used for.
Not sure about that. Mr. Pegram's thinking.
Chairman, I think we can certainly involve them in the process. I'm happy to do that so that they are informed about what the intentions are. I think the danger of opening it up to enable them to provide some wish list or dictation as to how that money should be spent. We have to be mindful that anything that we collect in terms of contributions has to be for items which satisfy the legal tests in the SIL regulations. So they have to be relevant to the development, reasonable in scale and kind. I can't remember the third one, I do apologise. But there are legal tests which have to be satisfied for the spend of any Section 106 money. So yes, we can make the final wording of the 106 available to them for information, and if they wish to comment, I wouldn't necessarily like to go as far as saying that they will be part of the negotiations, because that is something that is a very technical issue that we need to keep a tight rein on.
Thank you. Nobody else has indicated to debate, so I think we could put it to the vote. Are we ready to?
We need a motion.
We need a motion, we need a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, councillor Mason. Yep. Thank you. Councillor Phillips is indicating to second that, so we have a valid proposer and seconder. Shall we go to the vote? All those in favour, raise your hand, please. All those against? Don't think there's any abstentions by my calculation.
That's 7-4-2 against. So the motion
7-4-2 against, no abstentions. Thank you. Takes us to the third item, which I think from memory is Luttrell Hall, isn't it? Where are we? Let me just turn my papers over. Yes. It's the Borough Council to itself, so to speak, but we have to do that, and it's a listed building, but it's application 21/01802/full and 21/01803/LBC, Rushcliffe Borough Council, Luttrell Hall, Church Drive, West Bridgford. Proposals: 1, internal alterations to existing toilets, installation of a boiler flue and new external storage container, and 2, internal alterations to existing store to create accessible WC and to existing female junior toilets, including the removal of the existing partially glazed door within the entrance hall, installation of a boiler flue, clipped to the existing wall, fixings into the mortar joints, and new external storage container. Quite a lot there to get through, but I guess a lot of it's internal, but it is a listed building, and let's see where we go from there. You'd like to present this, Mr.
Sorry,
Cook?
Chair,
No?
can I just confirm that Councillor Murray, as ward, she's a substitution, but as ward member for this area,
Good point.
will be standing down.
Thank you for that. Yes, good point. Mr. Cook will present then, and are there any late representations, Mr. Cook, on this one?
No,
No late representation, so it's straight into your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This report considers both the planning and listed building applications. The application is referred to Planning Committee as it has been submitted by the Borough Council, and it seeks permission to undertake internal alterations to existing toilet facilities. This involves reconfiguration of walls and walls within the toilet area to create a new accessible toilet and separate toilet for use by the playgroup. The existing storeroom will be altered and converted to facilitate playgroup toilet, which will be separate from those existing toilets. There are no structural alterations proposed, and the works to create the new facilities do not impact on the historic fabric of the building, and all the works will be reversible. There are no objections to the proposed scheme, and the scheme has been amended following concerns that the boiler flue will be installed on the exterior of the building. However, the amendments now involve the repositioning of the flue within an existing chimney. The second part of the proposal is the erection of a small storage building at the rear of the car park, which will be which would be located adjacent to an existing building of a similar style and construction. As the works are, with the exception of the small shed structure, all internal with no impact on the exterior of the setting of the listed building, proposals are considered acceptable. It is therefore recommended that listed building and planning consent is granted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We have a representation, a written statement again, have we not, from Councillor Rex Walker? No, apologies, I'm losing it today, I really am. There's nobody for Luttrell Hall. It's been a busy day. No one for Luttrell Hall. So, we can go into the debate, I believe. Who's going to kick us off on this one? Nobody. Councillor Moore.
Right, that's okay, thank you. Well, I'm pleased to be seeing something done with Luttrell Hall. I think it's been a long time coming. The toilets desperately need doing, having used this facility for a number of years, but particularly now, with things opening up, I think it's important that this building, which, as you have said, is listed, is actually something is done with it to improve it for visitors. And I think this will be excellent. Oh, wait a minute, I've lost my finger here now. I think that everybody will benefit, whether it's West Bridgeford, whether it's from out of West Bridgeford, because people come all over to use it, and for concerts and various other things. So I think it is, I'm really pleased to see this and look forward to it being finished. So I'm so happy with it. I'd like to move the recommendation and all the add-ons that there are for it as well, which I have momentarily lost, but I will find. It keeps,
Are you looking for those?
disappearing. I was just looking for the actual recommendation. It's gone.
76.
Oh, I haven't gone back in that far enough. Thank you. So,
You're proposing.
yeah,
Have we a seconder? Councillor Bailey. Thank you. Anybody else wants to debate? No. All content? I think we could go to the vote then. Yep. All those in favour of the recommendation? Looks to be unanimous. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I've had a bad afternoon on remembering names. My apologies. It's been a busy day, but at this point, I'm going to leave you and let you debate the next big item without me and without Councillor Adair. So thank you very much, and I'll take my leave and hand over to my Vice Chair, Councillor Stockwood.
Yes, there's been a request for a short break. Is that okay with the rest of the minutes? Five minutes. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We look at the next item on the agenda, which is the last one this afternoon, and it's a county matters application. So it's land south of Burris Farm, Barton Lane, Barton in Fabis, Nottinghamshire. And it's for the extraction and processing of sand and gravel, including the construction of a new site and access road, landscaping and screening bunds, mineral washing plant and other associated infrastructure, with restoration to agriculture and nature conservation areas. I'm sure the officer will mention this, but I'll mention it again. We are just a consultee on this. The decision is left with County Council. Just a reminder. Thank you. Emily, if you can.
Thank you, Chair. We have had late representations on this application, which have been circulated. And just to reiterate what Chair said, we're only a consultee on this application. So those residents who have written into us have been directed to the County Council to provide them with their full comments, as they are the determining authority. But that is covered in the late representations. So the application relates to extraction of sand and gravel and then the restoration of the site back to agriculture and nature conservation. The site is located to the western edge of the borough. You can see on the plan there it's sandwiched between the A453 and the River Trent, with Attenborough Nature Reserve over here and Barton in Fabis down to the south. So that's just the aerial photograph, giving you a little bit more of a zoomed out view. The yellow one here is our boundary, our Rushcliffe boundary. Some of the site is in the city's jurisdiction, so they will also be a consultee to the County Council, but the County Council, will there be a consultee? No, it'll be a joint decision, apologies, yeah. So we're just looking at the bit that's in our area on here. So if I take you through some photographs, some of these photographs are the more recent ones, and some of them we've taken from slides we showed you when we previously considered the application. So we begin up on Green Street, which is this road here, if you can see on your screen. There's Green Street here and Foxcote Lane further up. So the first photo is taken from up here, looking towards the roundabout on Mill Hill on the A453, and then looking further south from the Foxcote Lane towards the site. We've then got further photos looking towards the Green Street area. One taken from the A453 looking towards the site, and further photos from Green Street with the site over on the left hand side of the screen there. We then move round to the sort of southwestern part of the site, and there is Chestnut Lane, which goes between these two properties and then becomes a public footpath, which is the footpath referred to in the report. So this is where it becomes a public footpath instead of a highway. And then there are some further photos just sort of walking through those fields and giving you an idea really of how open a lot of the site is at the moment in agricultural use. Just to take you through, and that's one of the embankments down to the Trent. So just to give you an idea really, members, of these green fields that we are looking at. The applicants have also provided their own photographs, which are labelled, again, quite detailed labelling, but just trying to demonstrate from inside the site some landmarks such as Green Street, which you saw photos from earlier, the Mill Hill Spinney, Brands Hill Wood, and then where the site entrance would be off Green Street in the distance there. And then further photographs just demonstrating the lay of the land really, and how rural and open it is. So the application would be phased. There would be a sort of plant area in this area here, which is next to the Green Street access, and then the development would be phased, with each phase taking place and then being remediated as it moves along. So the application was originally considered by Rushcliffe Borough Council back in 2018, and the committee objected, the council objected, for very similar reasons to those that are in the report today, Madam Chair. Principally the Greenbelt loss of openness, and then technical considerations, which are presented in reason 2 for refusal today. Further information has been subsequently submitted and considered again in August of 2018, and the Nottinghamshire County Council was advised that again the objection still stood. In January 2019, further information was submitted under Regulation 25, which is what the current application is, which is additional information relating to environmental impact. At that time, the Borough Council didn't submit a further formal response, but consultation was undertaken, and our own internal responses were provided to the County Council, still maintaining concerns. The difference from the previous application is that in March of this year, the Nottinghamshire County Council did adopt their minerals local plan, and this site was allocated for sand and gravel supply. However, I'm going to just read you an extract of the report. Apologies, I should have had this open. Which is paragraph 148, which states that although the site is adopted, has been allocated, the inspector who considered that minerals plan deferred the planning application being assessed by the County Council to determine whether the proposal would be acceptable when considering greenbelt, biodiversity and the wider ecological network. So this is a little bit different to when we allocate sites in the greenbelt, and we will take them out of the greenbelt to allocate them for housing. In this case, the site has stayed in the greenbelt, has been allocated for minerals, but the inspector has still deferred to the county to assess the greenbelt impact when they consider the application. So it's quite an important distinction to make. As we know, the NPPF sets out at paragraph 147 that inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the greenbelt. There are some exceptions which do include mineral extraction and engineering operations, but only where they preserve openness and do not conflict with purposes of including land within the greenbelt. Madam Chair, it's the opinion of your officers that whilst the mineral extraction itself may not be inappropriate and may not affect the openness, nonetheless the associated engineering operations and the resultant structures, which I'm just showing you some pictures of on the screen now, would not preserve openness. So we have some plant and equipment here that's over 10 metres high in those open green fields and further workshop and cabin buildings. Officers have been unable to identify very special circumstances that would outweigh this harm, and accordingly it is recommended the Borough Council object on greenbelt grounds. And as a second reason of refusal, that technical consultees within the Borough Council have identified other concerns, which are identified in reason 2, that are still outstanding. These relate to noise, dust, landscape impact, ecology and cumulative impact of the application combined with the housing land allocation at Clifton. I would like to propose an amendment to that condition, which is to remove air quality from condition 2, as this was previously considered back in 2018, and environmental health officers found that particular area to now be acceptable. So Chairman, it's before you with a recommendation to object to the County Council on greenbelt grounds and on the technical grounds outlined, with the exception of air quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And I believe we have another written statement which will be read out from the Councillor Rex Walker, the Ward Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Walker writes, I welcome the officer's detailed report and recommendation to maintain the borough's previous objections to this application on the grounds of unjustified and inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and significant adverse impacts in respect of noise, dust, landscape, archaeology, ecology and the cumulative impact with housing allocation. It is important to note that in allocating the land as quarry location within the Nottinghamshire Minerals Local Plan, the inspector deferred the assessment of impact upon the greenbelt and biodiversity to the point of the planning application, which you are now considering. In greenbelt terms, this application would cause significant harm to the greenbelt by permanently altering the character of the open land at present. Notwithstanding any proposed restorative action, the existing woodland and fields will be lost forever. The processing plant area would be a visually intrusive structure located at the top of the application site and visible from widespread public vantage points, thereby conflicting with the purpose of the greenbelt. The engineering operation does not maintain the openness of the greenbelt by virtue of its scale and urbanising impact. Whilst this part of the development would not be permanent, the harm caused during while it is in situ would be considerable and endure for a significant period. A key aspect of the application's impact on the greenbelt's permanence is the extent to which restoration measures can and will be made. I have concerns over the applicant's lack of track record in similar schemes and call into question their ability to manage a complex site such as this. For the application over its lifetime to be assessed as not having a permanently detrimental impact on the greenbelt, confidence must be present that the restorative measures will be implemented successfully. From where can such confidence come given the applicant's lack of previous delivery? The risk of permanent harm to the greenbelt is particularly important in this case given the geographical position of the site within the greenbelt, sitting as it does adjacent to the border of Nottingham city centre, therefore making it a high-risk site in respect of the greenbelt purposes of checking unrestricted sprawl, preventing neighbourhoods merging, safeguarding encroachment of countryside and preserving the setting of historic towns. The site having been assessed during the local minerals plan process as having significant environmental harm well above other sites considered. The development site is located nearby other large-scale developments and the cumulative impact of these should be considered in greenbelt terms. The developments at Larkhill, Fareham Pastures, A453 widening, Tram Park and Ride and Clifton West have and will contribute to urban sprawl and incursion to the countryside at the edge of Nottingham city centre, and this application would exacerbate the deterioration in the greenbelt's openness and permanence. The application should be rejected because given the other impacts in the area, the proposal would significantly exacerbate the cumulative impacts on the greenbelt and the wider environmental qualities of the area. In relation to the other negative impacts of the application, our officers, correctly in my assessment, highlight continuing concerns over noise, hours of operation, air quality, lighting and biodiversity. These concerns are supported by the extensively researched and evidence report submitted on behalf of the local communities, also summarised in the committee report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I believe the same councillor has sent in late representations which cover a lot of points which have already been put in the very detailed papers before us this evening. Is there anything that the officer wishes to add to that? No, because it basically is in accord with what the council position is. And also it's been recommended to that councillor, and I'm sure to any of us, that we can submit comments to the county council ourselves, but this afternoon we're looking at our response from the Borough Council. Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to this?
Thank you. Well, I do support the recommendation. I think this will have an awful effect on the quality of life for those that live in Barton. I can't think of many things that I would not want to happen near to me. I think it's greenbelt, and we always say, you know, there has to be special circumstances for greenbelt and for using greenbelt for these type of things, and I cannot find any special reason. I think it will cause significant harm to the area too, as being it's all here in the report and in the recommendation. Noise, dust, apart from the views, really very near to the river. It's also on a floodplain, And if that floods, you've got the noise and the buildings and all the extra things that there are on that site within a floodplain, apart from the gravel, as well as the sand. So I am more than happy to support the recommendation and would like to move it. I'm sure there'll be a seconder, but also listen to other people if they have any other comments too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas, you indicated. Yes, thank you. I agree with Councillor Mason and would be prepared to second, but I do have some additional suggestions that of the comments that should be made. The main objection that's being put forward in the officer recommendation is about Greenbelt, and the second reason for refusal is worded in a very general way. Greenbelt's a highly technical and legal issue dependent on case law, and it's likely to be determined in the end by expensive lawyers. NPBF paragraph 150 states that mineral extraction is not inappropriate in Greenbelt, provided it preserves openness and doesn't conflict with the purpose of including land in Greenbelt. It could well be argued that mineral extraction must include elements of processing and transportation. Sand and gravel extraction changes the landscape horribly, but apart from the processing plant, the proposal doesn't threaten openness. It could be argued that there's very little conflict with the 5 purposes of Greenbelt in NPPF 138. And then another important factor is that it's a temporary operation and the Greenbelt purpose is potentially strengthened after restoration. If very special circumstances need to be demonstrated, the proximity of huge development sites at Fareham and Radcliffe on Store, potentially requiring the sand and gravel, could be cited. So the Greenbelt argument could be decided either way. There are, however, other very good reasons for refusal or to call for changes to the scheme as proposed. Firstly, the extraction area is far too close to Barton in Fabes. Sand and gravel extraction is noisy and dusty and completely inappropriate this close to housing. If the development is permitted, the area to be quarried should be pulled further away from Barton. Secondly, the harm to some very special habitats here is just too great to be balanced by the benefits of the scheme. For instance, the shallow ponds and marshes at the foot of Bramshill are unique and I would imagine very sensitive. The plans work around them to some extent, but these sites would be surrounded by huge earth bunds which would shade the areas. The bunds would also perhaps completely change the drainage. The ponds and marshes would either drain shallower and perhaps dry out, or they could fill deeper. Either would change the habitat at the expense of some valued species. Again, should the development go ahead, there needs to be a much wider, undisturbed buffer around these habitats to protect them, and more work done on modelling the impact on them in terms of drainage. The temporary nature of the development perhaps works in favour in terms of assessing the long-term harm to the Greenbelt, but the proposed phasing would leave large areas dug up and disturbed for years, with the restoration only taking place at the end of the whole operation. This is just not good enough. The plans should restore each area after they're quarried to reduce the overall environmental impact over time. So I support and would second the officer recommendation for refusal, but would ask that these 3 issues at least are specifically included in the request to the County Council, response to the County Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, for those very detailed and relevant comments. Would you have anything to say, the officer?
Thank you, Chair. I think it is important to note that we are only a consultee, as we've said. So we have referred to our concerns and it not being adequately demonstrated to the council, our concerns about noise and dust, the landscape impact and the ecology. So those aspects are covered in part part two of the reason for refusal. But it does then fall to the county council to request that additional information. Just in terms of phasing, I do have additional phasing plans. I'm afraid they're not on the presentation. There is a degree of backfilling and restoration that takes part during phase 4, whereby a wetland area is produced at that point. So there's a degree of it taking place during the development, but obviously I do take your point that the overall scheme does come at the end of the extraction process, but there are some areas that get restored during. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Councillor Mason.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to comment that the bit that I was reading was particularly on 143 was the environmental and cultural designations. Some of the wording there does show what will happen to some of the nearby areas. It also says about water and the flooding, and that prior to making a planning application, applicants, they should discuss water abstraction issue with the Environment Agency. So I think there's a lot in the actual report, which will also go to the county council. It's not just the recommendation that goes, I believe. It's the whole report. And I think there's a lot in here that really points to the fact that it isn't just greenbelt. It is actually habitats, biodiversity that are packed into the site, really, and that there should be opportunities for created habitats to have multifunctional benefits, flood storage. And so I think there's an awful lot in this actual report that certainly makes me think that I'm also recommending the whole report as well as a recommendation.
Thank you. Mrs. Rudd, you should reply.
Thank you. Yes, just to pick up on Councillor Mason's point, that paragraph 138 onwards is also part of the development brief associated with the site allocation. So I'm just going to look at Mr. Pegram, but it would form part of the material consideration of the County Council to ensure it complied with those points, I think. But yes, nonetheless, we could forward the report to the county with our decision, so that they've got the full officer committee report as well.
Thank you. Mr. Pegram, you wish to add something?
Only say yes, correct. I've got nothing further to add.
Thank you. Yes, I was concerned when I read this very detailed report that this is a light sensitive area, and with the airport nearby and everything, so I would stress that aspect of it personally, because you know, there are the roads and the aeroplanes and animals that are going to be affected by the lights being on all the time in the hours of darkness sometimes. So you know, somewhat concerned about that as well. I'm very pleased that the whole report will be going to the County Council too. Thank you. If there are no more speakers, we have got Councillor Mason moving and Councillor Thomas seconding the recommendation that the Nottinghamshire County Council be informed that the Borough Council objects to the proposal and recommends refusal for the following reasons: item 1 and 2, which were read to you before, and just at the bottom it says, should the County Council be minded to approve the application, then the Council would like comments and suggested conditions from the Borough Council's consultees to be included in any decision.
Their full comments will be attached with this decision in order that they can be fully incorporated. Thank you. We go to the vote.
Can I
All
just
those-
check, Chair, sorry, because Councillor Thomas's second was on the basis of the additions that she outlined. I just want to check with the planning officer whether she was happy with those additions or whether you considered that as drafted it already incorporates those elements.
I considered that it did incorporate those elements. I would need some form of words if we want to if we want to make that reason a little bit stronger. I would appreciate some form of words to consider.
So the decision, probably for Councillor Mason actually as the mover of the motion, is whether you were satisfied that reason 2 as drafted is sufficient, or whether you wanted Councillor Thomas's additions to be incorporated in some way.
Thomas, please.
The reason I've suggested adding these things is I think the greenbelt argument could fail, and there are mitigations, and if we are able to, that could be put in place should this proposal go forward, but which I think makes it important to highlight these particular issues, which are the impact on residents in Barton and Faybasse, the harm to very special habitats outweighing the benefits of the scheme, and the long-term disruption caused by the restoration taking place at the end of the scheme rather than as it goes along. And those were the 3 points that I would, if possible, if Councillor Mason is in agreement, I would like specifically mentioned in the response to the County Council, notwithstanding the fact that they are getting the whole report and this is all in there. I think if we can actually highlight those points, then should it go forward and the greenbelt argument fail, then those points may be more likely to get mitigation on those issues. Thank you.
Before you answer that, Mr. Pegram wishes to speak, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, obviously we are a consultee on this one. I'd emphasise that point again. So we're not drafting here a reason for refusal that has to stand scrutiny in an appeal situation. Reason, or what we're suggesting in terms of the objection to this, in terms of on grounds of point 2, does pick up on most of the issues I think that Councillor Thomas has raised. It does talk that we are not been demonstrated to the satisfaction of the council that the proposed development would not have significant adverse impacts on, and then it lists all the issues in there, which do include noise, dust, and also ecology. And just to reiterate, Chairman, that we would send to the County Council all of our internal consultancy responses, which does include the Sustainability Officer, who has commented on the issues of ecology. So I think the fundamental thing is we're not drafting a reason for refusal here that has to stand scrutiny. We are putting forward an objection with all the supporting information that would go with that objection. I think the only one that we may just check on is Councillor Thomas's concern about the delay in any restoration of the site and the impact that might have during the period. And I'm not sure whether that is specifically picked up in any of the comments we've had. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pegram. Are you content with that explanation, Councillor Mason?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. The seconder. Thank you. So we will try and move to the vote this time. All those in favour of the refusal, please.
That's 7, Chairman, unanimous.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Was indicated that the previous chairman might come back, but I can't see him lurking anywhere. So I think it behooves me to close this meeting. So can I thank you all for your attendance this afternoon and wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.